If you've ever bought new farm equipment that's run by the PTO on your tractor, you may find that the PTO shaft that comes with the equipment isn't the right length. And that's what we have here with this Ibex drum mower. We're partnered with Tractor Tools Direct, and they were kind enough to provide us this drum mower and all the haying equipment we need to bale hay out here at Piney Grove. But some assembly is required. So we have a video out there with assembling this drum mower. It comes with two PTO shafts. There's one that drives this gearbox to the drum mower gearbox, and there's one that connects to the tractor to drive this gearbox. They provide a standard PTO shaft. I'm going to show you how I shorten a PTO shaft, but if you buy products from Tractor Tools Direct, they give you a step-by-step manual on how to cut a PTO shaft. Now let's bring you in closer and show you why this one won't work. The first thing I did was get my lower lift arms on my 3-point hitch in alignment with the pins on the mower. So I'm pretty much aligned on those, and the top link will have to be adjusted. So that's not really a factor for the PTO shaft. But what you want is when you go to hook it up, that you actually extend the PTO shaft to hook it up. In this case, I would have to back up the tractor about here, the end of the lift arms about here, hook the PTO shaft on, then get back on the tractor and back it up to align the pins, and that would essentially leave me no play on this PTO shaft. You'll see that it's collapsed completely. Now some of that is the plastic guard, but probably not very far within there, the actual hard metal shaft is bottoming out. You may be asking, if I can get it on there and get the pins on, isn't that good enough? And it's not. And the reason is this has to go up and down, so the length of this shaft is going to change. You want 1 to 2 inches of play so that this can go up and down and this shaft won't bottom out. If the shaft bottoms out, that's going to put inward pressure on the seal and the bearing on the tractor side, and that is a very expensive repair, and it'll also do the same on this side on the gearbox. So you would risk damaging not only the implement you just bought, but you also could damage your tractor. And the worst part of that is, besides the repair cost, is losing your tractor for a couple weeks while you get it repaired. So we're going to pull the tractor forward and shorten this shaft. Before we show how to measure and cut the PTO shaft, I wanted to roll this footage from food plotting last year where we were using a borrowed tiller where the owner of the tiller hadn't shortened the PTO shaft, and in order to get it onto the tractor, we had to hook it up this way. And that wasn't the only problem with the tiller that day. After a couple of passes, the lower lift arm pin on the tiller actually fell out. The tiller came unhooked on one side, and we had tilled about 100 yards with it this way. We'll leave a link to this video. There were more things that happened during this day. To better illustrate what I was talking about earlier, I've removed the safety cover, and it says right here, if you can read this, your safety cover is missing and to put it back on. So for illustration purposes only, this is the PTO shaft coming out of the tractor, and this is the PTO shaft going to the mower, and this is completely collapsed, and you can see the keyway right here that has to go on the PTO shaft. It would barely fit with the lower lift arms aligned with the pins. And what you want is a couple inches of play. This is jammed up against there, and that would put pressure either on the tractor or on the mower gearbox. And what you ideally want is a couple of inches of play here. So to achieve that, you need to cut out a couple inches off of this shaft. So to get a good measurement, I'm going to put the PTO shaft on the tractor the way it would be if everything was hooked up. I'm going to put the two shafts side by side. So with the PTO shaft side by side, you could see that's all the play that I have. It looks like there's about 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch of play. I want a couple of inches of play, plus I want this PTO shaft to work on the smaller Summit tractor. So I'm actually going to cut it back probably about 4 inches. That'll give me plenty of play, and it also will give me plenty of overlap. It'll give me about a foot of overlap on the PTO shaft once it's assembled. All right, I'm going to mark it now. We're going to go ahead and cut this about 4 inches or so, and then the same thing over here on this side. And before I cut it, I'll actually measure it to make sure I take the same amount off of both ends. For liability purposes, I just checked the instructions from Tractor Tools Direct, and they say to cut the shaft so there's about 1.5 inches of play once you're at your full travel limit. What I'm going to do is cut it a little shorter. I'm going to cut about 3 inches off, and that'll give me about 3 inches of play. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want this to be able to fit different tractors. And the Kubota tractor has more distance between the tractor and the implement than the Summit tractor. So I'm going to cut the shaft so it'll fit both. But we'll still have plenty of overlap even when I cut 3 inches off the shaft. So I'm going to mark it 3 inches. Pretty easy here on the plastic. I'm just going to cut where the plastic is. That'll give me 3.5 inches, and I'm going to mark 3.5 inches on this one as well. And these shafts cut pretty easily. You can do it with a hacksaw, but I don't recommend it because that's not very fun. The last one I did with a hacksaw, and I couldn't cut it very straight, so I'm going to use the trusty Sawzall. I got this shaft clamped down against this piece of wood on these metal sawhorses, and I'm just going to make my cut right here with the Sawzall. That was the easy side. The other side has the clutch. It's a little heavier. That's all it is to it. We're going to put these back together and show you the travel on the tractor. I will assemble it now and I'll show you how much overlap there is. So we'll put the PTO shaft on. And right about here, where my finger is where the end of the other shaft is. We have quite a bit of overlap, and then when we actually hook it up to the tractor, completely hooked up to the tractor, we have this much play. We're going to go ahead and hook it up completely and then raise and lower the drum mower, and you'll see how this amount of distance changes. And this is with the safety cover off. We'll have to put the safety cover back on after we get all these adjustments made, and also cut the plastic in the safety cover because the plastic will be too long. We'll check our clearance here. Ideally, you would want 1.5 inches. But like I said earlier, I cut it shorter to fit a smaller tractor. So I got about 3.5 inches of clearance here. And now I'm going to lift the mower up and down and show you how this will reduce and extend as you raise and lower the mower. Going up with the mower and down with the mower. And the way this shaft came from the factory, it was 3 inches longer. So it was about up to here, leaving only this little bit of play. Now we have plenty of play. We've got a solid 9 inches of overlap between the two shafts. So that's how you shorten a PTO shaft to protect both your tractor and your new implement. Y'all stay safe out there, and remember, life's short, tractor hard.